Anyway, the facts of life came to life. He was going to do farming, raise corn, and some other stuff, sugar cane, I don't know. He had no idea. And the way he's going to do this, he's going to put us, the kids, with a load. The Filipinos all carry what you call a machete. That's a big, like a big hunting knife, you know. Put us to work to cut down the bamboo bushes all around. Bamboo, bamboo, bamboo. Cut the bamboo and burn the bamboo so you can clear the land and plow it and plant corn or whatever you wanted to plant, sugarcane, beets. As I was 13, I said to myself, how idiotic. What are you going to do with the product? An opposing fact to this, there's an American family also on Mindanao, an American family who had a farm, a big farm in the Philippines on Mindanao Island, but they grew what they call apaca in Filipino. It's Manila hemp. Hemp. Hemp can be made into a rope. The strongest rope you can imagine. It's like jute in India. Apaca. They made rope out of it. They had the machinery to make the rope. So they were in business. They had all the equipment, etc. The reason I mention this, because they come into the picture later on. They were doing the right thing. Research. Emmerich didn't research. He was idiotic. I didn't know, couldn't figure out what in the world he's doing. The wind-up was, we did clear bamboo, knocked us out of the three of us. Even Fred, he did the little stuff, he hauled it away to burn it. Fred doesn't remember any of this, nor did Ernie. I was always thinking ahead. I was trying to document things mentally. Evidence is today that what you're hearing is because I'm sort of a documentary type guy. We planted, we grew corn, other stuff, peanuts I think it was. Peanuts was another product. And we lived in this shack, one-room shack, no partitions, nothing, bamboo floor, everything was bamboo. Windows were just an opening. There were no windows, it was just an opening. Can you imagine, can you just imagine what it is like? Okay, the corn grew, we got corn, and guess who got the corn? At night. The wild pigs got the corn, and everything else is gold. The peanuts, the sugar cane, whatever it was, they ate it all. And he was going, Emmerich was going bananas. I mean, this is stupid. Stupid isn't even the word for it. You're in the jungle, in the wilderness. He even tried to build a fence made of bamboo to keep the pigs out. Can you imagine? Useless. There's so much detail which I can't tell. It's just too much. The things that went on. We even had a chicken coop. We managed to get some chickens from the locals and raise chickens. Build a coop. Everything is bamboo. Then we had the chickens, then came the snakes. The boa constrictor snake, 10 foot long, at least 6-8 inch diameter, a mouth this big, foot big. was the end of the chicken. I killed one of them, chopped the head off. That's what you have to do, cut the head off. Big snakes, constrictors, when they get a hold of you, you're finished. But in the Philippines, in the jungle, they have people that live in the jungle, period. They never come out. It's a tribe. They're called Bakubo. Remember the name Bakubo, they're called. It's a tribe that lives only in the jungles. And they eat snakes. So we gave them the snakes. They came out once in a while. They were very, very friendly. You know, they have these big earrings and the rings around their legs. It's very decorative. But they smell. They don't take bath. So, and so many other things happen. Worst of all now, we couldn't grow anything. Then in the Philippines you have what they call typhoon. The typhoons hit periodically, some bad, some worse. Well, we got hit with a good one. And guess what? Flattened the house, the hut. Flattened it. It flattened it. We had nothing. We had to go in the jungle, find some young trees for posts, 4 or 6 posts, and cut bamboo and slit it. You had to slit the bamboo, used for flooring and walls. We rebuilt a hut. Coconuts, as you know, grow wild in the Philippines by the zillions. We chopped the leaves off the coconut trees. Some are high, some are low. And we folded the leaves to make it a thatched roof. That was the roof for the hut. That was it. The years go on. I have no idea how we subsided. How we subsided. The story is just endless. The occurrences. What I have in my report, my autobiography. How he managed financially, I have no idea. Then we acquired an Indian bull. An Indian bull. We had no transportation. Wherever you went, you had a hike in the mud. All the rain, the ground got soggy. You got stuck in it. We acquired a bull. That was a godsend. I don't know where he got it and how he got it. But the bull was our transportation. And I was the designated driver. We had to build a saddle for the bull so we could carry stuff on it. So we made a saddle made out of rattan. You see rattan furniture, same thing. We made a saddle we could put on the bull and I sat on top of it. The only place you could buy any provisions was on the highway that we came on. And that's a 2-hour trip. An hour and a half, 2-hour trip, one way. He gave me money, Filipino money, pesos. I don't know where he got it. He says, buy this, buy that, buy that, buy that in that store, which I bought the provinces, mostly canned stuff made by Libby Company. They were one of the biggest exporters there, Libby Company. And that bull was loaded. He was loaded, that poor animal. And me on top of it. And the muddy ground. You have no idea. It's not in the book. So I came back with the foodstuffs. We had no stove. no electricity, no water. How do you survive? Luckily, there was a creek nearby, not far away. Creek. The water was gorgeous. You could drink it without getting sick. You could be bathed in it. We did everything in the creek. The laundry, what laundry? Sackcloth. There's so many things transpired which I can't remember. But in the meanwhile, we heard the United States was reinvading the Philippines. We got it through the grapevine with the Filipinos. And luckily, I'm somewhat of a linguist. I picked up the language pretty well, and I could communicate with the Filipinos to stay in touch with what was going on the road, etc. And I was told that Americans landed in Guam. They recaptured Guam. They came down to Saipan, and they ultimately came to the Philippines. MacArthur, that's another story, MacArthur. He escaped from the Philippines when the Japs invaded. He went to Sydney, Australia, to plan the war strategy coming back to the Philippines. He said, "I shall return." It's very famous, "I shall return," MacArthur. He did return October 20th. So October 20th, 1944. Remember the date, October 20th, 1944. He landed on Leyte Island, which is the middle island of the Philippines. Luzon in the north, Leyte in the middle, Mindanao the biggest at the bottom. And the Americans reinvaded the Philippines. Ultimately, they wiped out Manila, they took the Japs out of there. And that in itself is such a sad story. When MacArthur left the Philippines, General Wainwright was left behind. He was second in command of all the forces in the Philippines, the American and the Philippine forces. And they were what they thought was a fortification island for the Philippines north of Luzon, Manila. It's called Corregidor. I never forget it. Corregidor. They had the biggest guns they could get on there, all around to protect the Philippines. Not one shot was fired when the Japs invaded. Why? Because everything came from the air. No anti-aircraft guns, just big 16-inch guns for the Navy, if the Jap Navy to come in. Big mistake. The Japanese bombed the hell out of Corregidor, and they then had to surrender, including General Wainwright. And that created the March of Bataan. If you haven't heard of March of Bataan, you haven't heard anything. The American prisoners were dropping dead on the march to the prison camps. A horrible story. That's just for another episode. Now getting back to the Philippine island of Leyte, the U.S. Navy was very strong, and they knocked out the Japanese Navy. The last battle of World War II in the Pacific was in the Gulf of Leyte in the Philippines. The U.S. Navy completely destroyed the Japanese Navy. After that, there was Mindanao, which was heavily fortified by the Japanese, heavily fortified for possible invasion by the U.S. But the U.S. landed on Mindanao, I don't remember the exact date. They reinvaded Mindanao, which was heavily defended. They had airfields there, they had 16-inch guns along the coast, you name it, they had everything there. But American intelligence knew exactly what they had. Meanwhile, after all this, we're still on that small island called Samar Island, where we made our existence living off the land for 3.5 years, from 1939 to 44. We stayed part of the time we were in Mindanao, but when the Japs started invading, we had to get off Mindanao. And escape to a small island called Samar. To get there, we had to use a rowboat at night, so the Japs couldn't pick you up and knock you out in the daytime. Picture that one. Just picture that one. But the Japanese occupation, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day, if you recall, the same day they invaded the Philippines. Bombed the heck out of Manila, they wiped it out. And they came down to Mindanao because we had to get off in Mindanao. We wound up on Samar Island. Why Samar? Because, well, the Philippines has a lot of islands. The Japanese did not occupy any of these small islands. There's no use to them. That's the reason. They're invalid. Didn't fit into their plan. They figured if they get the big islands, the rest of them are going to collapse. But the experience on the Samar Island is a whole complete new story. After all that has happened. And a lot of details are missing. I can't recall them all. We arrived on Samar Island. We found a hut, believe it or not, near the beach. It's been deserted. Filipinos saw the Japanese that took off. It was left behind, I guess. We took it and occupied it. Luckily, it had a tin roof. Someone had a tin, it was corrugated sheets, tin roof, which we could use to collect rainwater for food and drink and what have you. To take a bath, you went to the seawater, salt water. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, no money, no clothing, no material. What do you do? What do you do? Well, we had to go scavenging, which is all not in this report. To look for pots and pans, if you could find any. There was no stove. You just get some rocks and made a little fireplace like in the open. That was your cooking stove. Anyway. We found a few things, poured them in. After a year or so, we had to go barefooted. The shoes wore out, no replacement. So, barefooted for 2 years. Can you imagine barefooted? Coming from Frankfurt with all the luxuries to this. Insane. But, there's a word called survival. This was survival. Now we were all together. There was Emmerich, my mother, my two brothers, and myself. I have not talked about what happened to my sister in Switzerland. She still was left behind. And this is another story. She was left behind with friends, acquaintances in Zurich. She was left behind, ultimately found a man, got married, and had 2 children. And she died in Switzerland, in Zurich. That's my sister. No details. There are a lot of details. I'm not going to bring them up. So, we had to live, what you call live off the land. The Filipino peso, which is the currency of the Philippines, the peso, was gone. No longer in existence, because the Japanese didn't have any pesos. They printed their own Philippine occupation money to be used for exchange. I have a sample of it, just to prove it. Of course, we didn't get any. We didn't do with it. We existed. The Filipinos that finally stayed on the island, we existed on an exchange basis. To exist on an exchange basis, you first have to have something to exchange with. Now what? Emmerich, he had a pretty good brain, thank for that. He created a hand cranking, grinding apparatus, or whatever you want to call it. He said, I think you can get oil out of coconut. Out of coconut? Yeah. Okay, so he made a trial on it. He picked up some coconuts in the Philippines called wild. They're empty coconuts. You all have to do is pick them up, which we did later on, you'll find out. We did a couple of coconuts, maybe a dozen or so, with this contraption he made. It was a stand with a hand crank, and you took the coconut, you cut it in half. First you have to shell it. The outer shell is a husk, which we later used for fuel. I'll tell you later. You cut the coconut in half, get rid of the water, and then took half the coconut and hit it against that grinding mechanism, and you pulverized the coconut meat. Like salt. We did a bunch of those and we cooked it. It's a small pot as a sample. After you cooked it for about half an hour, the coconuts disappeared and you had oil. Oil. Wow. That was a godsend. The wind-up was, oil is a commodity. Could be used for empty things. Cooking, lighting, greasing, anything. I said to myself, that's our salvation. That's going to be our salvation. Fred, the younger one, who's now a little older, and Ernie, the older one, and myself, we went into the jungle and collected coconuts. And how did you collect it? I found an old bicycle. Somebody had an old bicycle, no rubber on it, just the wheels. I said, Wait a minute. I got the bicycle, it's not in this report. Used the wheels, dismounted it, and got a steel shaft. I don't know where the hell I got it from. I got a steel shaft, and we mounted the wheels on the shaft, and we built a box around it. So we could collect coconuts. And did we collect coconuts? Did we collect coconuts? Strip them, cut them in half, and put it on that grinder. The wind-up was, we had a 4 foot by 8 foot, 6-inch deep galvanized can, or whatever you want to pan, that I don't know where the hell we found it. We used it to set it on rocks, so we put fire under it. And guess what? We fabricated oil, a pan full of oil. Which we could use to exchange with the Filipinos chicken, eggs, bananas, you name it. The veggies they had, local veggies, and a fruit called cassava. Cassava is a type of potato. It's not rice. Because rice is not good for white people. That's not their diet. It wouldn't be good for us. Now and then, yes, but not a steady diet. The cassava took the place of potato. That's how we kept alive. And on the bottom of the pan, when you took all the oil out, lo and behold, there was sugar. 2-inch thick, the whole thing, sugar, hard sugar bar. Again, they couldn't get sugar from nowhere, except for us. We discovered we got sugar, another commodity. It was like a celebration, for God's sakes. So that was the means, the major means of survival. The food exchange with these commodities. Then again, not using the same pan. Again, Emmerich said, wait a minute, we could make salt from salt water. Again, we made a test. We cooked the salt water. Sure enough, there was salt. We filled the pan, bucket by bucket, filled the pan with seawater and used coconut husk and coconut shells as fuel. We cooked the water for hours, and the wind-up was 2 or 3 inches thick salt, the whole pan. Another commodity, because they needed salt bad. They couldn't go to Mindanao because the Japs occupied it. So they lived on the island, off the island. Whatever you could put, they had enough brains to do this. Of course, we made it, and we used it, and we survived. Until the US reinvaded the Philippines. And then at that point, I joined the US forces. I left home, what do you call home? I left them behind, Emmerich and the rest. I took off. I went back on Mindanao, and I met up with the US invasion forces. Who you? You know. So I had to explain, and I was interrogated. They took me to HQ, the headquarters, and I told them I could speak the language. So they said, look, You come with us, we make you a scout to sniff out the Japs. The fact that I spoke the language, I could get the locals who lived in Mindanao. They said, where are the Japs? We found them. I have a big article in the paper about this. I think you've seen it. And the net result was the US forces knocked the Japs out on Mindanao. And that, listen carefully, this ended the war in the Philippines. Scout